Hello everyone and welcome to 15 Minutes Sylius. This is the third episode in this series, and just a reminder, in this series we are tackling down the really simple and quick wins, quick customizations in your beginning of the adventure in Sylius that you may take. And I try to show you that every customization that you can make at the very beginning is really simple and it can be really efficient. I hope that in this episode you will also see something that is really exciting, because we will be talking about the topic that I really like a lot, and this is like the fundament of what Sylius is about. And I know that I already told you that the fundament is Sylius Resource and Grid Bundle that we touched in the last episode, and if you have not seen it, here it will be some link somewhere. In this episode we will be touching the state machines. If you have never heard about state machine concept, it's pretty simple. I have the definition here. So like the deterministic finite state machine, or the deterministic finite state acceptor, is this quantiple that I will show you here. And regarding the definitions, the sigma is the input alphabet and S is the finite non-empty set of states. S0 is an initial state, an element of S. Phi is the state transition function, and F is the set of the final states, a possible empty subset of S. And this is the state machine if you are a mathematician, but if you are a programmer or if you are a developer, don't bother about it. Like, I strongly encourage you to go into the mathematical model, because this is fascinating and this is something that seems like a real science, not what we are doing here. Yeah. But what we need to focus about is that state machine, basically a graph of states and transitions between them. So let's imagine that we have some concept like product reviews. We don't even have to imagine about it. Let's jump into Sylius and go into product reviews. So if we see that we already have some product reviews in our Sylius application, created probably from the fixtures, and these product reviews have some states. So this is a really simple states and transitions graph. So we have a review that is in the state new. It can be either accepted or rejected. So if I click here accept, it will be changed to accepted. If I click reject, it will be changed to rejected. I think that you know what I'm talking about. This product review state machine is trivial, but there are much more complicated state machines in the whole Sylius. Like, the whole checkout system is a state machine process. So it's modeled with some states, some transitions between the different states of the order. We can take a look at it in the code. We have the name of the state machine, we have the set of states, we have the transition, so from which state we can go to which state. We can always have only one finite state, one final state after the transition. And there are a bunch of callbacks, so like the services that react to what we are doing in this specific example in the checkout process. Okay, so as we already know the theory, at least I hope so, let's jump into the code and see how we can use this concept in our new entity brand. So remember that in the last episode we created the brand entity in SRC, brand entity brand, and it has some really simple properties like identifier, name, and code. Let's think about such concept that our brands will have some specific types, and we start with the type, like this is a regular brand. This is just a brand that is like, we don't have any relation with the provider of these brands for our products. We don't have any special emotions regarding them, or our clients, our customers does not have them. But then from this regular brand, we see that this is really popular and we can mark it as premium. And this premium brand maybe in the future will have some specific discounts or some specific offers only for the specific part of the specific groups of our customers. Let's start simple as usual, and let's go with the custom state or custom type property in our brand. Okay, so I started very simple, like even in a trivial way. I put some new property that is named type, that it has some default value named regular, and it has the getters and setters. But right now I think like I also created a migration, have not applied it yet because I figured out that Maybe if we are talking about some types or states, it would be nice to use some enumeration feature, because like we are already living in PHP world in 21st century, and we finally, from the last few versions, we have enums in PHP. So why don't we use them? Because this is exactly what we are trying to have. Like, we would like to have some specific set of states, and no other states will be applicable, or no other types will be applicable into this branch. So let's maybe remove the migration and change this specific field not to string but to enum. Okay, a little bit better, a little bit more sophisticated. I created a new enum named brand type, and it's in app brand model namespace, because it's not an entity, so there is no need, there's no reason to put it into entity namespace. It has some predefined types, states, like cases like regular, premium, and supreme, so what we have been talking about just before. And I use it in our column, and it's obviously still string from the from the database point of view, but it's an enum type. It has some default value, both in the database and in the code. It has some getter and setter. Generally, this state machine concept is built around the idea that we don't want to set the type or set the state of the entity, because setting the state is like not having any control over how it's set. We just need these transitions to move from one type from one state or from one type to another one. But from the code perspective, we still need this setter, because both of the tools that we will be using, that we can use in Sylius, use this set method to actually set the property. So just think about it, maybe use some static analysis to don't allow anyone to set this type or set the state directly, but we still need it from the code point of view. Let's maybe run the migration to see if there are any errors. It doesn't seem so. So this is the first step in our application. Let's go to the grid and add a new field called maybe string field, create a type, because obviously it's a type, set its label to type. And one important thing, because our type is not the string exactly, because it's an enum, so we need to tell grid, hey grid, if you will be rendering it, don't render it as a string, render it with the name. So because obviously we have the enum, we have the name of the enum, so we can call it with type.name. So this is like something that is called expression language. So grid will actually will know by default what it needs to call to display the value. So let's take a look at the admin panel. So I already refreshed the admin panel, and I see that the test brand is has the regular, so the default type. That's awesome. We are not able to do anything with it, but we will just implement it in a moment. One more thing that is quite important if we don't want to manage the type or the state of the entity directly. If we right now go to the admin panel to the either create or update form, we see that this regular or premium or supreme can be directly set in the form, and this is not something that we want. We don't want to set the state, we want to transition from one state to another. So right now there is the moment where we have to get rid of the default form. I think that you already noticed that in the previous episode we created no form type for the custom entity, because it's by default using just the publicly accessible properties except ID. But right now it changes. Like, we don't want to manage all of the properties. We only want to manage for now name and code. So what we can do, we can jump into our src brand, create a form type directory, and create a custom form type. Okay, so what I did is I created the brand type, which is the new form type for the brand entity. You see that I extended the abstract resource type from the resource bundle. This is like the default form type for the resources. So it has automatically injected the data class and some validation groups. So to use it fully, we need to tell the Symfony, okay, so inject into this brand type the name of the class. We could use the fully qualified class name of the brand, but we can also use the property, like the parameter that is automatically registered for our resources. You can see it here that I dumped it with debug container parameters and grabbed for brand. And by default, we are using the Sylius validation group. So I also type it, hard-coded it here. I created in the services YAML. You can use the PHP, you can use whatever else you want. It was just the easiest way to do right now. And this brand type needs to be configured in our as resource attribute in the brand entity. I already created that, so I created the brand form type as an alias, because also we have the brand type Enums, so to not mistake one with each other. And I also sorted it a little bit and split into multiple lines, because I just find it nicer this way. If I did everything correctly, we should see right now in the form type only name and code field, because these are the only fields that are specified in the form type. Let's take a look at it. And it is, I think it looks like it should look like. So, okay, so we can manage only name and code. Let's right now go back to our index and figure out what to do, what actually do with these states. As you can imagine, this whole state machine concept is pretty connected with SyliusResourceBundle, because we use it a lot for modeling the process, the business process in Sylius, not only checkout, but also processing the order itself, the payments, shipments, reviews. A lot of the stuff is modeled with state machine. And because of that, we also have some predefined actions that we can use in our state machine configuration. So we have some predefined resource action that we can use to create the state machine transitions. But first, maybe let's start with defining the state machine itself, because as you notice, we have not done it yet. Like, we don't have yet the state machine or the workflow definition, and we'll do it right now. As I mentioned at the beginning, we can use one of two components, Vinzu state machine, which is like the traditional legacy way of creating this in Sylius. It's still awesome, it still works, it's much simpler than Symfony Workflow, but we will use Symfony Workflow because it's a little bit more modern and gives you a little bit more flexibility regarding the configuration of the state machine itself. So right now I'll jump into the configuration and create the state machine, as we already mentioned it in the previously with regular, premium, and supreme states. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so what I did, I jumped into the config packages workflow YAML, hard word, and it was already there. And I created a new workflow. This is, as you can expect, this is using the Symfony Workflow component. To briefly go through the configuration, the most important things are like the support entities or supported class. We are obviously configured for the brand entity. With the marking store information, so what kind of marking we will be using. So it will be the method, our set type, and the property that is named type. We can define the places as enum, so it will automatically know that there are regular, premium, and supreme places. We can define the initial marking, so what will be the initial place that we start from. So this is the regular one, and some transitions. So we have the transition mark premium, so it goes from regular to premium. Mark supreme, so it can go either from regular and premium to supreme, and degrade, so go from premium and supreme to regular. How we can know does it even work? So we don't have any configuration yet to show it on the admin panel. If I refresh the page and it shows no error, probably this is something good. So it shows no error. Let's take a look at the profiler, because it can allow us to take a look at the workflow that we have defined. If we go to the workflow section, we have plenty of workflows that you can see from Sylius, but there is also our custom workflow app brand. If we take a look at the graph, we see that these are exactly the transitions that we made. So going from regular to supreme, etc., etc. So it seems like it's working. How we can use it right now in our application? I can imagine that we would like to have some kind of the buttons here, like the one button for making the regular supreme, one from making the regular premium, and if the brand is premium, make it from premium to supreme and then degrade it, etc. Like, you know what I mean. How can we do it? As I already told you, that we support this functionality a lot in SyliusResourceBundle, so we can create the dedicated SyliusResourceBundle apply transition action, both on resource and on the grid. And right now I will configure it, so we will have the as we have the create, update, delete actions and index actions on our resource. We can have another one, the apply transition action, and the same in the grid. We have the create, update, delete actions. We can define a new one, apply transition action. So it will render for us the button to move from state to another. Let's take a look how it can be done. The apply state machine transition action is ready, at least the one of them that we need for our resource. So it is for the mark premium action. I define, like, use the attribute, the action from the Sylius resource, apply state machine transition attribute. It is pretty self-explainable, and it has obviously some root prefix and the name, and it defines some transition and graph. And the same for the grid. We are using the apply transition action, and it has some name. It's using the root that we created before. I already debugged it in the debug root. Does it actually is created? And it does. It has some root parameters because we need to pass the ID parameter, and it's the resource.id, so it will be ID of this specific resource. And it has some options, graph and transition. To make it a little bit nicer, I also created the icon. I could create a label, but I decided to not create a label. I created an icon, tabular star. Tabular because we are using some tabular icons for the Bootstrap and the admin panel. You can take a look. You can use any icon that you want. Okay, so we can think, or you can question about why do we define this graph and transition here and here, because obviously they are like repeated. And it's actually a really good question if you ask it. The reason is that the configuration here in the grid is used to determine whether the button should be the button for transitioning the entity should be displayed or should be disabled, because it's checking is it possible to make this transition. And this one is telling the SyliusResourceBundle what exactly needs to be done to transition from one, so which transition we should use to transition from one state to another. If we go to the admin panel, I have already refreshed it. We see that there is some additional button. Seems like something that we could potentially click. Let's click it. And our brand is right now premium. Awesome. We see that the button is disabled right now. We cannot click one more time because we cannot go from premium to premium. We could potentially put there the option like show disabled. I think it's show disabled to false, but with no typo. Disabled. Let's give it a try. Okay, so it does not show the disabled action. That's what we wanted to achieve. Let's maybe create a new brand, like test brand 2. I'm really creative with names. Test. Okay, so it's regular and it's short. Okay, awesome. I know it's not really important, but I would like to see some color there because it's pretty sad to see it white. Let's call it, let's specify the class button color, button color. These are obviously the classes from Bootstrap. So if you would like to determine any, like you would like to apply any style to this button, you can specify it here. But obviously it needs to be somewhere there. Okay, so it will be class button purple. And it is purple. Awesome. Like, especially when we are using different icons and different without labels, it's nice to differentiate somehow these buttons. Okay, so we can go right now from regular to premium. Awesome. And as you can imagine, we will be doing the same things for two other transitions. So for going from premium or regular to supreme and degrading the entity from supreme or premium to the regular one. But this is something that I would ask you to do by yourself. Treat it as a challenge for yourself. It should not be hard, because you'll be just using the same things that I already did. But as you can expect, we need this kind of action for every transition that we will be having in our state machine. Going a little bit back to what we created, I think that there is one more thing that I have not mentioned when overlooking the configuration for the state machine. This is the type here, because the Symfony workflow can be configured in two different types: workflow or state machine. State machine, like, so the basic difference is that in state machine, like, the entity is always in one state. So we see that it's either premium or regular or supreme. In workflow, we could configure it differently. So you will have multiple states in RI that you can define in a different ways how it should behave, but this is definitely more advanced configuration. Let's focus on the state machine right now, especially that in most business cases it will be just enough. Maybe also during browsing the code you saw that there are some additional things that we have not done in the previous episode. As you know, that we have the repository that is opened with the branch for each specific episode, and on the episode 2 branch I also put some improvements to what we did previously. Like, I created the new unique attribute for the code and the validation for making it unique entity, because code should be unique within our system. I also created some translations in the messages and YAML, so it looks a little bit nicer. If you don't have it, you don't have to have it, but I just put it there because I believe that this way the application is a little bit more valuable. At the very end, I would like to thank you all, thank the whole Sylius community. Thank you very much from people that were asking questions, and actually right now I would like to answer a few of them. The first question was asked about the automatization of what we are doing. So generally, why we are not using any comments for creating things like entities and grids. So there's a make entity and make grid command created with Symfony Maker bundle. And obviously this is something that you should use. Generally, the more automatization, the better, because technology is awesome. It allows us to use less time for the things that are trivial and focus on the things that are actually valuable. So things like business value, custom features, like really complex scenarios that we need to implement in our application, and don't waste our time for the things that are really trivial and that can be done by stupid machines. But why don't we use them in this video series? Because on the other hand, I really believe, and I think that I can say for all of us in the commerce weavers, that understanding the process that is behind the automatization helps using it much more efficient, much more better. And also gives this level of consistency that if something is not working, we are still able to do it ourselves. On my university studies, I have one of the lectures that were called the computers architecture. And the teacher said to us that he will be teaching us how to create a computer from scratch. Obviously, it was a little bit exaggeration, but you know the point. Like, we're taught about the things that are happening inside the computer, even if we don't need to know about it. But the process of learning of how these automatic things works was first valuable, because we knew what we are facing with when we are using computers. Like, you need to remember, I'm really old. And I have been doing it like tens and hundreds years ago. and it was the time without AI, and the auto completion in the IDE was something that was really spectacular. So obviously it somehow influences my view on this point. But anyway, I really believe that knowing how the process is working before automatizing it is a valuable thing, and I want you to know what we are doing before we are making it more automatic and fun. I hope that you have fun with what we are doing. The same question and similar answer is for the AI. I really try not to use too much AI during coding. Obviously, the PHP Storm from time to time is giving me some hints and just forces me to use some AI features, but I really try not to do that. We could make it probably much quicker, what we are doing in these episodes, but again, it doesn't matter too much. We are not here to do things quick. We are here to do things right and to understand what are the processes behind the things that we are doing before automatizing them. There was also a question about the tests, or specifically the test-driven development. If you know me, you know that I'm a test freak and I cannot live without tests, and it really hurts my feeling and burning my soul that I cannot test while I'm doing these examples. But I know that even though tests are really important and are the crucial part of the modern application, this is not something that we need to touch at the very beginning of the adventure with Sylius or any other platform. Definitely we will create some new episode sometime in the future about testing, about the test-driven development approach, maybe even about behavior-driven development. I think that we have one discussion about behavior-driven development. We can link it in the description or somewhere there. That can be a problem with this video for most of you because it's in Polish, but you can still learn Polish. It's not so hard. Yeah, so testing, we'll touch the testing definitely in the next episodes. And also on other questions, why we are using the attributes for config, because we can, for example, for the entity mapping with the ORM, or for resource bundle, we're using attributes, not, for example, the configuration in YAML files or PHP files or even XML files. Because I'm a dinosaur, as I already told you, I'm not a very big fan of attributes, but I see the benefits of using the attributes at the very beginning or at bootstrapping the things that we want to achieve. It's just easier to start with attributes because we have everything in one place. We don't have to jump between files. I would personally prefer to do all of the things in the separate configuration files. But again, as I mentioned, I'm an old person and I have my own habits. And you don't have to share them. Yeah, definitely the other reason for that is that the Symfony, using the attributes is quite a Symfony standard right now, and we can have our own preferences regarding how the code should look like. But what is also important is the consistency in using the standards, because when we are using standards, it's a much better base or fundamental to grow good practices in the code. It's not always one-to-one, like it's not always that if the framework uses some standards, not using them means that you will have bad application, but using these standards will mean probably that it's easier to achieve the well-written application and the application that will be, for example, passable to another development team. So thank you for these questions. Thank you for these questions from the Slack and from YouTube. And if you have any more, feel free to ask them. Obviously, as usually, if you have fun with watching these videos and find them valuable, hit the bell and subscribe and like. I always feel bad when asking for that, but you know that this is how the YouTube works. That's the end of this episode. If you want to have any help with some complex Symfony e-commerce projects, you know where to find us. We are here, we are Commerce Weavers, and I'm Mateusz, and it was a pleasure to meet with you, even if I don't see you and you only see me. But it was still a pleasure. Thank you very much and see you in next episode.